He had a great run. But I think what Oklahoma's defense did to him was just too much. Like, you can't overcome that. And the reason why is because of the first man on my board. It's my 2B. It's not my 3. It's my 2B.
We can't ever have
Marcel
a
Reed.
segment without you breaking the rules at some point.
And there's a reason why I broke the rules, and I'll talk about this a little bit when I get to my 2A. But realistically, Marcel Reed did the most impossible thing after looking like the biggest scrub in the world in the first half. He led them on the biggest comeback the SEC has ever seen in a regular season game. The biggest comeback any SEC school has ever had against another SEC school. Because he looked awful in the first half. I talked about Ty Simpson looking pedestrian. Marcel Reed looked worse than pedestrian. He looked like a toddler just learning how to play football for the very first time. And in the second half, I don't know what he figured out, but he started using his legs. And next thing you know, he was dynamite. They lost their number one running back in that game. They were down to Emmitt Smith's son, who was a transfer, as their lead horse in the third quarter. Marcel Reed decided, all right, it's my turn now. Now, don't get me wrong, in the first half, he did get let down by his own receivers, so much so one of them never saw the field again. But Marcel has what he was able to do definitely catapulted him back in the conversation where he was already just outside of it as the number 4 going into this past week. With what he did, that's a Heisman-worthy moment. Being able to lead a comeback like that is a Heisman-worthy moment that everybody wants. Everybody talks about, you need a Heisman moment. That was his, but he's not done yet. He has to prove himself over the next 2 weeks, and he has a really great opportunity during rivalry week versus in-state rival that we finally get to see this rivalry again, and I've never been happier. Texas and Texas A&M, that it means something. And Marcel Reed has every opportunity to make it mean even more and make himself a Heisman Trophy winner if he can show out in that game. But he's not the only one that has that chance. And that number 2A in this is Julian Sayin. Now, everybody's like, oh, what are you talking about? Julian Sayin. Yes, they played Rutgers this week. I don't care about this week. This week, as long as they don't lose at all or it's not a 7-point game or less, Julian Sayin should still be in this conversation come next week when we talk about Michigan. Julian Sayin has been one of the best quarterbacks in the college game. But he's not the best, but he's been one of the best. And I struggled to put him in as he was a first-year starter, and it just didn't sit right with me when he had Jeremiah Smith. Marcel Reed didn't have a Jeremiah Smith. He has a Kelcey Concepcion. Julian Sayin has Jeremiah Smith. So some of my potential placement of him gets hit by that, but I don't feel bad because I'm not the only one in the world that thinks he's not the number 1 quarterback. But I think if he can beat Michigan and beat Michigan handily, first of all, first time beating Michigan in 5 years, huge. Every Ohio State fan would love him. The 110, whatever it is, in the stadium. Well, they'd probably hate him because I think they play in Michigan this year. But yeah, it's one of those things like every Ohio State fan would love him. He would go down in the lore as the guy who broke the curse. And if he has a good game, and that doesn't even have to be like a 300-yard game. It could be like a 220, 2 touchdown, no interception, but near perfect game. And they win comfortably over Michigan. I think that would be something that Julian Sayin could take to the house as like his Heisman moment. And this is where I struggle with Julian Sayin is he hasn't really had the need to have a Heisman moment because Ohio State's been a front runner from the get-go. I mean, not necessarily a front runner, but as close as it gets. Once you got in front, they didn't take their foot off the gas, that's for sure. But he just hasn't done enough yet to get him over the hump. But I think the Michigan game could set him over. And number 1 is the guy who has done enough in every way, shape, or form. Fernando Mendoza is my number 1. And everything I said about Marcel Reed, Julian Sayin, needing to have big games in rivalry week is true, but they still need this guy to take a step back. Fernando Mendoza has had his Heisman moment last week. Not last week, 2 weeks ago. His comeback win was impressive to watch. Him breaking the record this past week for touchdowns in a single season for an Indiana quarterback was impressive to do. Everything he's done all year long, his completion percentage, his yardage, his touchdowns, leading an Indiana and Frank Cignetti coach team to this position where they're in the playoffs yet again for the second year in a row. And this guy is a kid out of Cal. Let's not forget, he was a guy who was not looked at as a 5-star quarterback. He is the number 1 person in the nation quarterback-wise for college football today, and he should be a Heisman Trophy candidate, and he should probably be the favorite for everybody. And if you don't agree with that, well, fair. I can understand, but it better be close. He's no less than 2 in any one of these conversations. And honestly, if you put him at 2, you better have a really good reason why he's at number 2. But for me, Mendoza is like the odds-on guy here. And it's gonna take a Herculean performance from either Sayin or Reed, but everybody else it feels like is out of this conversation as we get down to it. All 3 of these guys are under 1,000 odds to win, but the next closest is like Diego Pavia, who's like plus 2,500. So it's one of those things where you look at it as like these 3 are it. They're gonna be in New York. We'll just see which one has the better performances in the next 2 weeks. But I think really it may not even be this week. It's going to be really next week is going to decide this. I doubt any one of these 3 has a bad week this week. I mean, Julian Sayin plays Rutgers. So again, as long as you don't blow it this week, you should be fine. But yeah, this is where I have my top 3 or top 2 and a +1. I don't know how you want to put that. But yeah, this is what I got. Fernando Mendoza 1, Julian Sayin at 2A, and Marcel Reed at 2B because they're just too close to tell.
I feel like Mendoza should be out in front. I think that one's clear, concise. He's the number 2 team in the country. He's lighting it up. Number 1, Julian Sayin's been very good. Obviously, I think Jeremiah Smith you could have both of them in this top 3 as well. I think they both have been absolutely awesome. Marcel Reed, what he just did. There's no one. Mendoza's running away with it, but I think the rest of them, as you mentioned, could catch him. But they gotta put a little extra stank on it if they want to catch him. Like it's gonna take a little bit of help. But there's not really anybody else in the conversation besides these 3 plus Jeremiah Smith. I mean, Gunnar Stockton, doesn't have the statistics to back it up necessarily, doesn't have quite the pizzazz, the oomph to back it up, if that makes sense. I'm trying to think just even of those playoff teams.
Yeah, it's
really those
Dante's up there, Dante Moore from Oregon. You also, but like it's honestly, it really like looking at the betting odds across the board, they're outside of the plus 2,000s in a lot of cases for the next closest person on the board. It's like Jeremiah Smith is like 6th or 7th on the list as next closest still. And it's like people don't know what to do with the 2 between Sayin and Smith. Of like, okay, who's the credit worthy one? And obviously it should be both. They both are worthy of their own credit, but they are combined in every thought, which is why I also struggle with putting Julian Sayin any higher, is because he still has Jeremiah Smith. Like across the board, if you look at receivers with a quarterback, there is no other receiver with a quarterback that matches up to Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith. Like nobody.
Best duo by a country mile. But I think we're getting close to the point where if things continue, Mendoza's and start being in like that plus 100, the minus 200 range. I think that's what kind of we saw Josh Allen down the stretch of the MVP. It's going to get real clear really quickly, barring an epic collapse of ridiculous proportions. But let us know down below who you all have as your Heisman front runners as we get closer and closer to Thanksgiving and Rivalry Week. Be sure to drop those down below, as that will wrap up